Top 10 most corrupt African leaders of all time. Hello explorers, welcome back to another informative video and thanks for watching. In today's video, we shall be looking at the top 10 most corrupt African leaders of all time. From human rights violation to squandering funds for personal gain, when it comes to Africa, both during and after colonialism, Africans can be recognized for having some of the worst leaders the world has ever seen. Whenever you read on corruption, you are told that the political will or the tone at the top of a country is the first foundation to fighting corruption. But when the person at the top is the one who brings about the act being fought against, it makes it hard to debunk such a practice. The leaders who tend to be most corrupt are as a result of absolute power, and their corruption goes beyond kleptocracy and embezzlement, as crimes against humanity are usually rampant. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily uploads. The problem of corruption, as rampant as it is today, is not a recent phenomenon. Of the numerous corrupt leaders in Africa, come along as we review the crème de la crème of them all. Here are the top 10 most corrupt African leaders of all time. Number 10. José Eduardo dos Santos of Angola. José dos Santos is the second longest serving leader in Africa, as he has been in power since 1979. He rose to prominence as part of the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola, which fought for Angola's independence. After the country's independence, he became a member of the Central Community and eventually served as a Prime Minister. On September 20, 1979, he was elected as the second president of Angola and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. José dos Santos has repeatedly stated that he will step down and elections will be held, but elections always end up with him being re-elected. While on the surface, he has boosted the Angolan economy and developed the oil sector of the country. However, as per the Angolan economy growth, the wealth of its citizens remains stagnant, with almost 70% of the population living on less than $2 a day, while the budget of the government has grown to $69 billion. Under his rule, $32 billion in oil revenue disappeared. Corruption is like family business in the Dos Santos family. He has a net worth estimated at over $20 billion and his daughter has a net worth of $3.8 billion. Number 9. General Idi Amin of Uganda. General Idi Amin first rose to prominence when he took the rank of Major General in the Ugandan army. Following its independence, he became commander of the army and then took power in Uganda through a military coup in January 1971. He was in power only for 8 years, but it was the worst years of Uganda's history. When he took power, he said he was not a politician and would not stay in power until free elections were held. But however, a week later, he declared himself president and suspended numerous parts of the Ugandan constitution. He created a military dictatorship where military officers were put in top positions of the government and military tribunals were put into civil laws. He created a state research bureau which would torture and execute anyone who opposed his rule. Thousands were killed and displaced during his rule, and he redirected most of the country's money towards the military and himself, which left most of Ugandans to suffer in abject poverty. He took so much of the Ugandan money for himself, so much so that the inflation rate rose to 1000% by the time he was driven out of power. Number 8. Mobutu Sese Seko, President of Zaire, now Democratic Republic of Congo. The product of a missionary school education, Mobutu Sese Seko Koko Nguema was a serial coup plotter. During the 1960 Congo crisis, he led the coup that ousted Patrice Lumumba, the country's first democratically elected leader. In return, he was appointed commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Less than 5 years later, he led a second coup, installing himself as the president. Declaring a regime d'exception, he assumed sweeping powers and went on to the rulership of the country for almost a third of the century. The original big man of Africa, Mobutu consolidated and kept power by creating a vast patronage network. Built on the exploitation of the country's immense mineral wealth, Mobutu used it to effectively nullify any opposition. Endemic governmental corruption, mismanagement and neglect over a number of years led to hyperinflation of 4,000% by 1991, a large external debt and a massive currency devaluations. Amidst all of this, Mobutu managed to amass one of the largest personal fortunes in the world. While the actual amount will never be known, he is alleged to have embezzled almost $8 billion. His excesses were legendary and included having the world's leading pastry chef Gaston Lenotre flown in from Paris by Concorde to personally deliver his birthday cake. While not publicly condoned, corruption was so systemic under Mobutu that at one stage he advised party delegates that if you steal, do not steal too much at a time. You may be arrested. Yibana Mayele, steal cleverly, little by little. Holding on to power for 32 years, Mobutu proved him adept at maintaining rule in the face of internal rebellions, external invasions and attempted coups. He finally relinquished power in May 1996 following an uprising led by Laurent Kabila. Mobutu, already terminally ill, fled to Togo and then to Morocco, where he died from prostate cancer the following year. Number 7. Charles Taylor of Liberia. Charles Taylor is one of the few corrupt leaders of this list who actually resigned from power. He was in power from 1997 to 2003. As president, he created his own private army while reducing the size of the actual armed forces of Liberia. He was charged with war crimes for his ties with the violence in Sierra Leone in 2003, which included murder, enslavement, and the use of child soldiers. He was believed to have accepted diamonds in exchange for weapons to support the rebels in Sierra Leone. His corruption of the treasury was as bad as his human rights abuses, as he embezzled money not only for his own gain but also to fund rebels in other countries and to destabilize the region. In 1999, he was accused of being a gun runner and diamond smuggler. He was indicted on 11 crimes against humanity, and in 2003, he was asked to step down by the international community. He was convicted and sentenced to 50 years in prison. Number 6. Idriss Debby of Chad. Idriss started his rise to fame in Chad when he joined the military. Idriss Debby was the commander-in-chief of the army. He remained a strong and loyal member of the army until the central authority fell apart in 1979. He took power in the late 1990s and has been in power ever since. As president, he puts Chad on the path to economic growth with the building of an oil pipeline. However, the pipeline ended up bringing the corruption within Chad to the forefront. The revenues from the Chad-Cameroon pipeline development and the pipeline project was supposed to be used to combat famine within Chad. Instead, he took the funds to buy more weapons for the military in order to combat the numerous coup attempts against him. His regime has also been characterized by human rights abuses against his opposition, and it is clear the elections held since he took power have been fraudulent. In 2005, he eliminated term limits and said he will reinstate them in 2016, but the people have little hope that he will stand by his word. However, coup attempts continue to come after every election, and the economic conditions of the majority of the people continue to decline. Number 5. Omar Al-Bashir of Sudan. Omar Al-Bashir came to power in 1989 after he had led a military coup that ousted the democratically elected government of Prime Minister Sadiq al-Mahdi. In 1993, he declared himself president and disbanded all rival political parties. He has held 3 elections since he took power and was re-elected each time. However, each election has been under fire for corruption. Omar Al-Bashir is the only standing president with multiple arrest warrants against him by the International Criminal Court. His warrants are mostly for crimes against humanity, mostly the crimes in Darfur, where he was said to be connected to the genocide that took place there. He was indicted for crimes of murder, extermination, torture, rape, forcible transfer, and other war crimes. However, since Sudan and Al-Bashir do not recognize the International Criminal Court, he continues to remain president. His corruption goes far beyond his crimes against humanity. He has also done a great deal of stealing from the country. It is suggested that he has had as much as $15 billion stashed across the globe. Number 4. Theodore Obiang Nguema of Equatorial Guinea. Teodoro Obiang Mbasogo took power from his uncle Francisco Macias Nguema in 1979. He holds power with an iron fist and remains the longest-serving leader in the world and the longest-serving president in Africa. He started his presidency on a positive note, saying that he will not have the same leadership as his uncle. But that is far from the reality he has brought his people as he continues to win presidential elections through fraudulent means, winning as much as 97% of the votes. He has also refused to step down from his position as president despite accusations of since 2011 of him violating the constitution. Assassinations by the government, unlawful imprisonment, torture and inhuman prison conditions. His theft of state funds has increased his wealth and that of his family to staggering levels. Obiang's and his cabinet receives millions of dollars each year from oil revenue, which does not translate to public spending, but he rather spends it on presidential expenses. Number 3. Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe was the president of Zimbabwe from 1987 to 2018. He won the election for prime minister in 1980 and was sworn in as president when Zimbabwe gained its independence. As soon as he came into power, he created a single-party state and employed a North Korean security force to deal with any incidents. In December of 1987, he declared himself president and consolidated all powers of the state and gave himself the power to dissolve opponents and declare martial law. Mugabe continued to win presidential elections due to widespread corruption and fraud. Many believe that the corruption and fraud are the only reasons that he remained in power. Zimbabwe has the highest unemployment rate of any African country with a 70% unemployment rate. It is estimated that the country loses up to $3 billion to corruption every year. Most of his corruption comes from his desires to consolidate power and rig elections to stay in power indefinitely. He is also known for looting the diamonds deposits and killing or torturing his opponents. Number 2. General Sani Abacha of Nigeria. General Sani Abacha ruled for only 5 years, but during that time he operated a brutal regime which left Nigeria in abject poverty. He came to power through a military coup on November 17, 1993. During that time, he issued a decree that gave him absolute power by placing the authority of the regime over that of the courts. He also issued a decree that would allow him to imprison anyone for up to 3 months without trial. However, General Abacha's economic achievements were very impressive given the dire conditions the state was in prior to his leadership. Today, General Abacha is considered to be one of the most corrupt leaders in history because of the amount of money he stole from his own country. The main export of Nigeria was oil. Abacha and his cabinet took control of nearly every aspect of the industry, stealing over $10 billion. Human rights abuses were also very rampant during his time in office. He was known to kill or imprison any opposition who dared him. Torture and lengthy imprisonment were also common practices during his regime. Number 1. Francisco Macias Nguema of Equatorial Guinea. Francisco was the first president of Equatorial Guinea and he created a bad example for those that would follow. Francisco became deputy prime minister in 1964 and he became president when he won the only free election that the country had ever held in 1968. Francisco declared that anyone who threatened the government would be punished with death. He also said that insulting the president or his cabinet was punishable by up to a 30 years prison term. During his reign of terror, almost a third of the population of Equatorial Guinea were killed or exiled. He was a very paranoid man who relinquished powers to no one, that he kept the entire national treasury under his bed. He was also distrusting of anyone who was educated or appeared to be educated. He killed or exiled anyone who appeared to be educated. It therefore became extremely risky to have any books or papers in their possession. It is this paranoid mind that finally led to the end of Francisco Macias Nguema's reign, as he was overthrown by his own nephew, Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasago, in 1979. There you have it, explorers. Those were the top 10 most corrupt African leaders of all time. Thanks for watching this video. If you wanted to cover any of your top 10 topics, leave us suggestions in the comments and we will do well to grant your request. Also, if you did enjoy this video, do well to give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe and share with your friends.